Guantanamo is a, appalling business. Obama had promised it would be closed down. One of the few promises he made which one could agree with, because by and large he didn't promise too much. But this promise has been totally betrayed, Guantanamo, because the military want it, because it's useful to lock people up without trial indefinitely till they die or till they commit suicide or till they're total wrecks, and then you can release them into asylums. And the reason the Canadian imprisoned in Guantanamo hasn't come out is because the United States take Canada for granted, and because Canadian governments aren't capable of really making a big issue out of it. Even the British got a few Brits out of Guantanamo, who now everyone says were innocent. But the Canadian government increasingly, over the last decades, and since the end of the Cold War, because that removed all the space even for states to maneuver. I'll give you one example. During the Vietnam War, not a single Western European ally of the United States sent troops in. The British Labour government refused. They backed the war, they didn't send troops in. 2 countries sent troops, Australia and South Korea. Compare that to Afghanistan, where Obama boasted when he was being given the Nobel Peace Prize, and 42 countries are fighting with us in Afghanistan. In Canada, I note that CBC still refers to the Afghan war as a mission. Well, that's very sweet, but it's totally inaccurate. It's not a mission, it's a war. People are being killed, people are dying, people are resisting, people are fighting. And it's wrecking a neighboring country. So that's the reason that Canada is seen now as a total vassal state with no real independence of its own. It follows the United States. Ignatieff would have been exactly the same, if not worse, by the way. He backed the Iraq War when he was teaching at Harvard against many other Harvard professors who were very good on it. So I don't think he would have been too different. The NDP, I don't know. I mean, I have a feeling that were they to be in a coalition government, they would be fight on some things, but on foreign policy, they would probably cave in. They've done on many other issues. I mean, they even wanted to change their name to the Democratic Party, but thought it was decided to delay the process for a bit. So I'm not optimistic about Canadian politics, and there was a time, under Trudeau, for instance, he had quite an independent foreign policy, for instance. Didn't go along with everything the United States did. But again, it is linked to US hegemony, which developed after the defeat of the Cold War enemy, that this became the world's only empire, and to fight it was not easy, though people did resist and are resisting it. And all the Western governments, by and large, fell into line. The Germans and the French refused to fight the Iraq War. The Germans refused to go into the Libyan War. The German Foreign Office issued quite a strong statement. So with the partial exception of Germany, and I would have thought that given all the war films that are constantly made about the heroism during the Second World War, it'd be a good idea for the United States and other Western countries not to force the Germans to participate in wars. I mean, it's quite a nice thing that there's a strong pacifist spirit in that country now, and there are good reasons for it. So to taunt them for not joining the wars. That and Guantanamo, I mean, I have to say this, that I think, and I've said this to the Cubans, they should have put up a bigger fight, and they still should, saying that this base was not given to you or not agreed with you to torture people and use it as a torture and detention center, but to keep your troops there. And had this been part of it, we would have resisted the treaty. And the fact that they've been silent is not a good is not a good thing. But as long as they've got it, they'll use it. I mean, surely they could have countries which support them wholeheartedly offering sort of tiny prisons or concentration camps on a small scale to put these prisoners in. I mean, Harper wouldn't object. The British certainly wouldn't object. The populations probably would, I hope. But the governments wouldn't, so why keep it there? Because they would be forced to try these people. And that is what they want to resist doing, because they don't have the evidence to lock them up. I mean, some of the cases that have come out are completely appalling. So I hope that that answer has also satisfied the last question from the woman who introduced herself as a first-generation Canadian. I mean, first-generation North Americans are few and far between for reasons that we know. And I think given the hysteria about immigration in the United States and occasionally in this country too, when something happens, it is worth recalling that these countries are migrant countries and that the first migrants from Europe came as settlers who more or less wiped out or drastically reduced the native indigenous populations here, which did not happen to the same extent in South America, by the way. Also worth noting, possibly a difference between Protestant fundamentalism and Catholic fundamentalism and the Jesuits, who had much bigger faith in their capacity to convert people, whereas some of the Protestant fundamentalists who came didn't feel that the savages should be converted. So, this goes a long way back, but at least people should remember that all these countries, or these two countries in North America, Canada and the United States, have been built by migrants. And I'm not talking about the early settlers, but the settlers the immigrants who have come over the last century and a half, whoever they may be. So for them to turn against migration is actually disavowing their origins and their past. Thank you.